Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really diving into, well, one of the most incredible stories of power, corruption, and ultimately murder in recent American history.
We are talking about the Murdaugh dynasty in South Carolina.
Exactly. And our goal here is to use this really comprehensive set of sources we've gathered, detailing their whole century-long history,
Right.
and trace how they went from this almost like imperial level of power
Yeah, generational power.
to this just catastrophic criminal collapse.
Oh,
Quite
wow.
the story.
It really is. And it's such a unique look at institutional failure. The central puzzle, the paradox we're trying to unpack is just staggering.
How did they do it?
Well, how did a family that basically was the local justice system for, over 80 years?
Dominating that circuit solicitor role, yeah.
Right, the chief prosecutor. How does that end up with the patriarch, Alex Murdaugh, convicted of killing his own wife and son?
And not just that, but facing, what was it, over 100 other criminal charges?
Yeah, 102, I think, grand jury charges for fraud, theft, drug offenses. I mean, stuff spanning decades.
So it's way more than just a true crime story.
Absolutely. It's really a deep dive into what happens when accountability just disappears for generations.
Okay, so to really get this, we need to start with the setting. Murdaugh country.
That's what they called it.
We're talking about the low country of South Carolina, right?
Okay.
Specifically, the 14th Judicial District.
And that's a huge area. It covers 5 counties: Allendale, Colleton, Hampton, Beaufort, and Jasper.
5 counties.
Yeah.
So for this massive chunk of the state, the Murdaugh name wasn't just influential.
No, it was the authority. That political and geographical dominance, that's the bedrock of the whole dynasty.
When people called it Murdaugh country, it wasn't just like a nickname.
No, it reflected reality. From 1920 all the way to 2006, one family essentially held the reins of the region's judicial and political systems.
Almost a century.
Almost a century where the main voice for law enforcement and prosecution came from just one family. That's incredible power.
So let's dig into that generational control. It starts way back in 1920.
Right.
And we see 3 guys in a row, all named Randolph Murdaugh Sr., Jr., and the third,
Yep, the Randolph dynasty within the Murdaugh dynasty.
serving as the circuit solicitor for that entire 5-county district.
Just think about that for a second. 86 years of one family holding that specific job.
And the circuit solicitor, just to be clear for everyone listening, that's like the district attorney, right?
Exactly. The chief prosecutor. They decide who gets charged, what cases go forward, what evidence gets presented for every single criminal case in those 5 counties.
The kind of power they must have built up, I mean, it must have shaped everything. Local culture, how the courts worked.
Oh, completely. Our sources mentioned this control led to just enormous judicial and political influence. Kathleen Parker, the columnist, she pointed out that the justice system there was often seen as, basically rigged.
Rigged.
Yeah. Local lawyers would often just settle civil cases rather than even risk going to trial.
Why? Because they knew the deck was stacked.
Pretty much. They knew the rules were just heavily influenced, if not outright controlled, by this one family.
That's more than just political clout. That's like owning the whole system.
It really is systemic domination. They weren't just participants in the law. They were practically creating the legal environment they operated in.
But it wasn't just the solicitor job bringing in the money, right? Their private law firm was key, too.
Absolutely. The family's real wealth wasn't coming from the solicitor's salary, not primarily. It was magnified hugely through their firm, Peters, Murdaugh, Parker, Eltsroth, and Detrick, PMPED.
PPED, got it. And they specialized in personal injury stuff.
Very successfully. High-stakes personal injury litigation, that was their cash cow.
Okay, so here's where it gets, like, really murky, right? The overlap between their public power as prosecutors and their private success as lawyers, this whole judicial hellhole era.
Exactly. PMPED became massively successful in the early 2000s, and a big reason why was because they knew exactly how to work the system.
How so?
Well, South Carolina had these laws back then that were, let's say, very plaintiff-friendly. It allowed something called forum shopping.
Forum shopping. Okay, what's that mean?
It basically meant that plaintiffs and their lawyers could choose the forum where they thought they'd get the best outcome, the most sympathy.
Regardless of where the accident or whatever actually happened.
Pretty much. There was this specific loophole. If you were a South Carolina resident, you could sue any out-of-state company.
Any company?
Any company that just owned property or did any business anywhere in the state.
So wait, if a national trucking company had like one tiny office somewhere else in South Carolina,
Yep.
PMPE could sue them in the 14th Circuit, even if the truck crash happened hundreds of miles away.
That's exactly right. And guess what happened in Hampton County, where the Murdaughs had the tightest grip?
Let me guess. The judges didn't transfer the cases out.
Bingo. Judges, many of whom were, let's just say, very connected to the Murdaugh system, routinely refused to move those cases. Plus, PMPED had this reputation for aggressively using subpoenas, burying defendants in paperwork.
Knowing the local judges would likely rule in their favor.
Knowing the whole environment favored them, it made the 14th Circuit infamous among defense lawyers nationally.
Wow. I mean, the national attention must have been intense.
It was. The American Tort Reform Association, a group that lobbies against what they see as excessive lawsuits, actually named the 14th Circuit the third worst judicial hellhole for defendants in the entire country.
Third worst in the U.S. That says a lot.
It really does, and you get a sense of the money involved from that local nickname for the PMPED offices.
Right, you mentioned that, the house that CSX built.
Exactly. Because they sued CSX Transportation, the railroad company, so often and so successfully, it literally paid for their building, or so the saying went.
So their business model was basically built on this favorable, some would say rigged, local system.
Largely, yes. But it came at a cost to the area, too. Businesses were apparently reluctant to set up shop in Hampton County because the legal risk was just seen as too high.
Did that forum shopping loophole ever get closed?
It did. In 2005, the state Supreme Court and the legislature stepped in and changed South Carolina's corporate venue law. That pretty much ended the easy forum shopping days.
And the firm itself. PMPED. They changed their name recently too, right?
They did. In 2022, right before Alex Murdaugh's murder trial started gaining huge national attention, they rebranded as the Parker Law Group.
Trying to distance themselves from the Murdaugh name, clearly.
You'd have to assume so. Trying to shed that toxic legacy.
Okay, so let's look closer at the actual Murdaughs who built this empire. The three Randolphs. Because their stories seem to set the stage for Alex's downfall.
Absolutely. It starts with Randolph Murdaugh Sr., born 1887, died 1940.
He's the founder. Started the law firm after USC law, became the first solicitor in 1920.
And served until he died in 1940.
And his death. That wasn't straightforward, was it?
No, that's really the first kind of public shadow over the family narrative. He died when his car collided with a freight train, Charleston and Western Carolina Railway.
At a crossing. Given who he was, people must have immediately started talking.
They did. And what happened next is really telling.
His son sued the railroad.
Right away. Buster Jr., his son, sued C&WC, claimed the crossing wasn't maintained properly, settled for an undisclosed amount.
Undisclosed.
Yeah.
But the whispers started then.
Exactly. Intense speculation that maybe it wasn't just an accident. Was it suicide? Was alcohol involved? We don't know for sure.
But it sets a pattern, doesn't it? Tragedy, followed by a lawsuit, followed by a quiet settlement.
It really does seem to be a recurring theme. Which brings us to Randolph Buster Murdaugh Jr.
Buster Jr., 1915 to 1998. He's the one who really locked down the dynasty, right?
Oh, yeah. He was circuit solicitor for an incredible 46 years.
46 years, from 1940 to 1986.
And ran unopposed almost every single time. I think only twice he even had an opponent.
He must have been a force of nature in the Low Country. What was he like?
Sources describe him as legendary, known for, quote, his love of chewing tobacco, his courtroom prowess, and his flair for acting out murders before spellbound juries.
Wow. Part lawyer, part showman.
Definitely sounds like it. But he wasn't afraid to push the boundaries, ethically speaking.
How so?
Well, the state Supreme Court actually rebuked him multiple times for improper closing argument.
Particularly in death penalty cases.
Yes. There's this one really stark example cited in the sources.
What did he do?
In a rape case, during his closing, he basically argued that if the jury acquitted this defendant, that it would mean the defendant goes free, and then he, the solicitor, would basically have to let all the other accused rapists in jail go free too.
You're kidding. That's blatant manipulation, playing on fear.
Absolutely. Using his official position to improperly sway the jury. And this wasn't an isolated incident.
Seems like a pattern of thinking they were above the rules. Did that go back even further?
Well, yeah. In 1956, he was actually indicted by a federal grand jury.
Federally indicted? For what?
For allegedly tipping off a local bootlegger that federal revenuers were coming.
The chief prosecutor accused of helping a criminal avoid federal agents.
Exactly. Now, he was acquitted by the grand jury, but just the fact that the accusation was made and investigated federally.
It speaks volumes about the kind of local immunity and, I guess, connections they felt they had.
It really defines their relationship with the law, doesn't it? They weren't really subject to it in the same way. They administered it, often how they saw fit.
Okay, so then comes the third Randolph Murdaugh.
Randolph Murdaugh III, 1939 to 2021.
He kept the solicitor tradition going.
Yep, from 1986 until he retired in 2006. And just like his father, he never once faced an opponent in an election.
Unopposed every time. He maintained that image of respectability, though, right? Got that big state award.
He did. The Order of the Palmetto, which is South Carolina's highest civilian honor, received it in 2019.
So he was the last of the line in the solicitor's office.
That's right.
And the timing of his death is just incredibly poignant, isn't it?
Almost Shakespearean. He died of natural causes on June 10th, 2021.
Just 3 days.
3 days after his daughter-in-law Maggie and his grandson Paul were murdered.
Oh, it really feels like the symbolic end of the whole Murdaugh era.
Structurally and literally, yeah. Which brings us right to the fourth generation, the one that brought it all crashing down.
Richard Alexander, Alex Murdaugh.
Alex graduated USC Law in '94, joined the family firm PMPED, seemed destined to take over.
But
Instead, March 2nd, 2023, he's convicted of murdering his wife Maggie and his son Paul, now serving 2 life sentences, back-to-back, no parole.
So the big question hanging over everything is, what happened? What caused this generation, Alex's generation, to collapse so violently, so publicly?
Well, it seems the unraveling didn't just start with Alex. The behavior of his sons, particularly the sense of entitlement, played a huge role.
Let's talk about the surviving son first, Richard Alexander Murdaugh Jr., Buster.
Right, Buster. Went to Wofford College, then USC Law, like his dad and grandfathers. But right away, there's controversy.
Law school incident.
Yeah, that's a really glaring example of how the family operated, or at least how they thought they could operate.
What happened?
After his first year, Buster apparently didn't have the grades to be readmitted. His GPA was too low.
Okay.
So, according to the sources, Alex reportedly paid a lawyer $60,000.
$60,000? For what?
Specifically to lobby the dean of the law school.
To let Buster back in.
To let him back in, potentially with a, shall we say, adjusted GPA. It just shows this ingrained belief that any problem, any rule, could just be bought or leveraged away with money and influence.
Whether it worked or not, the attempt itself is telling. And Buster was also linked to the Mallory Beach case, right? The one that really started the public collapse.
He was. He allegedly loaned his ID to his younger brother, Paul.
Who was underage.
Right, so Paul could illegally buy the alcohol they were drinking before the boat crash. Buster ended up settling with the Beach family in 2023 over that.
Okay. And then there are the much darker rumors surrounding Buster. The death of Stephen Smith.
Right. That's a case that just won't go away. Stephen Smith was 19, openly gay, a nursing student. Found dead in 2015 on a rural road near the Murdaugh estate, Moselle.
Cause of death was blunt force trauma.
Yes. Initially, the Highway Patrol ruled it a hit and run.
But witnesses started mentioning Buster.
Repeatedly. Mentioning Buster's name, suggesting maybe there was some kind of relationship between him and Smith. These were persistent rumors.
What does Buster say?
He strongly denies any involvement, vehemently denies any romantic relationship, says he was at the family beach house hours away when Smith died. He has an alibi.
But the suspicion clearly stuck to him.
Yeah.
He even sued Netflix and Warner Bros.
Yeah, in 2024. Sued them for defamation over how they portrayed his alleged connection to Smith's death in their documentaries. Shows how much those rumors have become part of the Murdaugh story now.
Okay, now let's talk about Paul Murdaugh, the younger son, the one who died.
Paul Terry Murdaugh. At the time he was murdered, June 2021, he was actually under criminal indictment himself.
For the Mallory Beach death.
Exactly, for boating under the influence resulting in death.
That boat crash in February 2019, it really feels like the point where things started to publicly unravel.
It absolutely was the catalyst. Paul was driving the boat, he was underage, and his blood alcohol was 0.286.
0.286. That's more than 3 times the legal limit for driving a car.
Exactly. Highly intoxicated. He crashed the boat into a bridge piling near Paris Island. Mallory Beach, one of the passengers, was thrown overboard and drowned.
And the way the authorities handled it immediately raised red flags, didn't it?
Oh, big time. It just screamed special treatment, despite how drunk Paul clearly was, despite the fatality.
No field sobriety test.
Nope. Wasn't taken to jail right away, wasn't handcuffed at the scene. Later, a judge even denied the prosecutor's request to make Paul wear an alcohol monitor while he was out on bond.
People must have been outraged. It sounds like classic Murdaugh influence at play.
That was the immediate speculation: insider interference. The local paper, the Island Packet, David Lauderdale, wrote it reeked of insider interference.
In that case, the civil lawsuit the Beach family filed. That's what ultimately broke through the Murdaugh's financial secrecy, wasn't it?
That was the key. The Beach family's lawyers were relentless. They pushed hard for financial discovery, wanting to see Alex's records.
And right before the murders happened.
Literally days before Maggie and Paul were killed, a judge scheduled a hearing. The purpose: to force Alex to finally turn over his financial documents for that lawsuit.
The walls were closing in.
Completely. And it wasn't just the lawsuit. Our sources suggest Maggie herself, Alex's wife, had become suspicious about their finances.
Whoa.
Apparently, she'd arranged to meet with a forensic accountant. The financial pressure on Alex must have been immense. He knew, or must have feared, that decades of fraud were about to be exposed.
That system that protected them for so long was finally cracking under the pressure of this one civil case.
Precisely. And that pressure had other consequences, too. It led SLED, the state law enforcement division, to take another look at Stephen Smith's death.
Because of evidence found during the boat crash investigation.
Well, SLED said they reopened the Smith case in June 2021, based on information they gathered during the investigation into the murders of Maggie and Paul.
Ah, okay. So the murder investigation shed new light on the Smith case from 2015.
It seems so. Remember, it was initially ruled a hit and run.
But SLED changed that.
Yes. By March 2023, SLED publicly announced they now considered Stephen Smith's death a homicide, not a hit and run.
A homicide. Have there been any charges?
No charges or indictments yet as of our recording date, but just changing the official classification from accident to murder, that's huge.
It suggests that the initial investigation might have been influenced or incomplete because of who was potentially involved.
That's certainly the implication. It highlights how that unchecked power might have allowed a potential murder to be swept under the rug as a traffic accident initially.
Okay, but there's another death connected to the Murdaughs that involves outright proven fraud. Gloria Satterfield.
Yes, Gloria Satterfield. She was the Murdaugh's housekeeper for many years. Died in February 2018.
What was the official story there?
The story Alex told is that she tripped over one of their dogs on the front steps of Moselle, their estate, fell, and died from complications a few weeks later.
A tragic accident.
That's how it was presented, but the circumstances around her death were incredibly irregular right from the start.
Like what?
Well, for one, no coroner was ever notified, which is standard procedure for a death resulting from an accidental fall like that.
No coroner. Was there an autopsy?
No autopsy performed. And maybe most critically, her death certificate listed the cause of death as natural causes.
Natural causes after a fall downstairs.
Exactly. A coroner later testified that classifying it that way was totally improper. It immediately suggests someone was trying to control the narrative, maybe avoid scrutiny.
But the real crime happened after her death.
Right.
With the insurance money.
Yes. This is where Alex's financial crimes become incredibly brazen and cruel. Gloria Satterfield had 2 sons, her heirs. They were due a significant insurance payout from the Murdaugh's homeowners policy because the accident happened on their property.
How much money?
Around $4.3 million.
Okay, so Alex helped the sons get that money.
That's what he told them he was doing. But instead, he conspired with a lawyer friend, Corey Fleming, and a local banker, Chad Westendorf.
What did they do?
Alex basically orchestrated it so that almost all of that $4.3 million insurance payout bypassed the Satterfield sons entirely.
What were where?
And ended up funneled through various confusing transactions directly into Alex Murdaugh's personal bank accounts.
He stole it from the sons of his longtime housekeeper after she died in his house.
Yes. He was actively hiding the fact that the money had even been paid out while stealing millions meant for her grieving children.
That's just beyond predatory. Did the sons ever get their money?
Eventually, yes. Through subsequent lawsuits against Alex, Fleming, Westendorf, and others, they ultimately recovered over $6.5 million in total settlements.
And what happened to the conspirators? Fleming and the banker.
Corey Fleming pleaded guilty to 23 state and federal charges, got nearly 14 years in prison. Chad Westendorf also faced consequences. And Alex, of course, pleaded guilty to stealing the Satterfield money as part of his larger financial crimes case. That contributed to his 27-year state sentence.
And the circumstances around Gloria's death remain suspicious enough that they actually exhumed her body, right?
They did. In 2022, authorities got permission to exhume her body as part of the ongoing criminal investigation into Alex. The questions around her fall just never went away.
So all these different threads, the boat crash lawsuit, the financial pressure, Maggie's suspicions, the reopened Smith case, the Satterfield fraud, they all seem to tighten around Alex in the spring of 2021.
Exactly. Which leads us to the night of June 7th, 2021. The murders of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh.
Alex called 911.
Yeah, just after 10 p.m. Said he'd just returned home and found their bodies near the dog kennels on the Moselle estate.
How were they killed?
Both shot multiple times, but with different guns. A shotgun was used on Paul and a rifle on Maggie.
And Alex's story from the start was shaky.
It was. He initially claimed he hadn't been down at the kennels earlier that evening, that he'd been visiting his elderly mother who has dementia.
But that alibi fell apart.
It did. Cell phone evidence eventually placed him at the kennels with Maggie and Paul just minutes before prosecutors believed they were killed.
So what was the prosecution's theory? Why would he do it?
Their argument was essentially motive rooted in desperation and distraction.
Distraction from what?
From the financial crimes. They argued he knew his decades of embezzlement were about to be fully exposed by the Beach lawsuit's financial discovery. His reputation, his freedom, his entire world was collapsing.
So the murders were a way to, what, buy time? Generate sympathy?
Possibly both. Create a massive tragic diversion, make himself appear a victim, maybe hoping it would pause the financial investigations or at least garner public support.
And the timing really lines up with his financial exposure, doesn't it?
Perfectly. Just 3 months after the murders in September 2021, his law partners at PMPED confronted him.
About stealing money.
Exactly. Suspected embezzlement they described as being in the millions. He resigned immediately. The firm even put out a statement saying his house of cards began to collapse.
And then things got even weirder. The very next day.
The roadside shooting incident? Truly bizarre. Alex claimed he'd pulled over to change a flat tire on a rural road and someone shot him in the head.
But the injury was superficial.
Very superficial. A graze wound. And the story quickly unraveled.
He admitted he set it up.
He did. He confessed that he'd arranged the whole thing with a former client and his alleged drug dealer, Curtis Edward Smith, Cousin Eddie.
Okay, let's unpack this scheme. Why would he stage his own shooting?
It sounds completely illogical, but his stated reason was insurance fraud. He told police he wanted Smith to kill him.
Kill him?
Yeah, make it look like murder, so that his surviving son, Buster, could collect on a $10 million life insurance policy.
Why not just commit suicide?
He apparently believed, mistakenly, that if his death was ruled a suicide, the insurance policy wouldn't pay out. But if it looked like murder, Buster would get the money.
That just shows such extreme panic and maybe Greg-fueled thinking, right?
Absolutely. Utter desperation. Now, Curtis Edward Smith, for his part, denied that he shot Alex as part of the insurance plot.
What did Smith say happened?
Smith claimed Alex was distraught, suicidal, and asked Smith to shoot him. Smith said he refused. They struggled over the gun, and he fired it in the air to try and scare some sense into Alex, not actually hitting him intentionally.
Regardless of who pulled the trigger, the whole thing was a failed, frantic attempt to get cash and maybe more sympathy right after his embezzlement blew up.
Seems that way. A very public, very clumsy act of desperation.
But the real shock came when investigators finally got a full look at those financial records Alex fought so hard to hide. The scale of the stealing.
It's truly mind-boggling. The estimates vary, but Alex allegedly stole somewhere between $8.8 million and maybe as much as $20 million.
$8 to $20 million. From who?
From his own clients. Dozens of them. The number of victims is estimated between 30 and 50 people.
30 to 50 families or individuals.
And the range in the dollar amount, that $8.8 to $20 million, that just reflects how hard it was for investigators to trace all the money. He hid it through shell companies, fake accounts with names like Forge, which sounded like a legitimate company but was just him.
He went to elaborate lengths to hide it over years.
Over more than a decade, it seems.
And who were these clients he stole from? Were they wealthy people?
That's what makes it so much worse. No. Overwhelmingly, his victims were vulnerable people. People who trusted him completely and desperately needed the settlement money he was handling for them.
Like who?
Disadvantaged minorities, according to the indictments, an injured state trooper, an immigrant family, a man who lost his wife, minors who lost parents, Even, horrifyingly, a young man who was a deaf quadriplegic.
He preyed on people who had absolutely no power to fight back or even question him.
Exactly. The case of Hakeem Pinkney is just gut-wrenching.
Tell us about that one.
Pinkney was a young deaf black man who became a quadriplegic after a car accident in 2009. Alex represented him and his family.
And stole their settlement money.
An estimated $800,000 to $1 million of it. But what's even more disturbing?
Yeah.
Hakeem Pinkney died unexpectedly in 2011. His ventilator became mysteriously unplugged.
Oh my God. Was that ever formally linked to Alex?
Not formally charged as murder, no. But the circumstances are deeply chilling, especially considering the financial motive Alex had. And Alex had even brought the Pinkney family into business with Russell Laffitte.
The banker.
Yeah, the CEO of the Palmetto State Bank. Laffitte was later fired and got 7 years in federal prison for helping Alex steal from Pinkney and other clients. It shows the network of complicity.
And this wasn't a one-off. This pattern repeated.
Over and over. Another example, Sandra Taylor's mother. She was supposed to get $180,000 from a settlement. Alex gave her only $30,000 and pocketed the rest.
It wasn't sophisticated white-collar crime in some ways. It was just blatant theft from trust accounts.
Straightforward theft from people who are often injured, disabled, or grieving. And then there's the drug angle.
Right, his opioid addiction was a big part of the trial. But he was also involved in dealing.
The indictments allege he was. He was charged with conspiring with Curtis Edward Smith, cousin Eddie, to buy and distribute oxycodone.
Using the stolen money?
Allegedly using $2.4 million of that stolen client money over 8 years, starting back in 2013, to fund this drug operation.
So he's stealing from clients to fuel his addiction and potentially a drug distribution network.
That's what the charges lay out. And on top of everything else,
Who's more?
tax evasion. Indicted on 9 counts for dodging nearly $500,000 in state income taxes.
On the money he stole.
On nearly $7 million of that stolen income that he never reported. The sheer breadth of the criminal activity, all happening while he's this prominent lawyer from a powerful family. It's just breathtaking.
So the legal hammer finally came down hard. What were the sentences for all these financial crimes?
For the state charges, he ended up pleading guilty to 22 counts. They consolidated the original 101 charges down. He got 27 years in state prison for those, sentenced in November 2023.
27 years. And the federal charges.
Those focused on about $12.4 million in fraud against clients. For those, he was sentenced in April 2024 to 40 years in the federal prison.
40 years federal, 27 state. Are those running at the same time as the life sentences for murder?
Yes, all concurrent. So he's effectively serving 2 life sentences plus 40 years. He will die in prison.
His legal fate is absolutely sealed.
Completely. And here's a final detail that really speaks to his character, or lack thereof, that 40-year federal sentence. It was actually increased from what prosecutors initially considered.
Right.
Because after he'd agreed to cooperate, he failed a polygraph test. And then prosecutors discovered he'd hidden even more stolen money, an additional $1.3 million stolen from 11 more victims that he hadn't disclosed.
He was still trying to hide things, even after making a deal.
Even while negotiating his federal sentence, it showed a total lack of remorse and continued deception, so the judge gave him a harsher sentence.
So his life as a lawyer was obviously over. Disbarred.
Oh yeah, swiftly. The South Carolina Supreme Court officially disbarred him in July 2022. Cited his admitted reprehensible misconduct, no question about that.
And what about all the assets? The house, the money he might have had left?
That became a huge legal battle because there was evidence that the Murdaugh family, maybe other members, were trying to move money around, hide assets from creditors and victims.
Still trying to protect the remaining wealth.
It appeared so. So a judge stepped in and ordered all of Alex's known assets frozen. They were put into what's called a receivership.
What does that mean?
It means an independent person, a receiver, takes control of everything property, bank accounts to manage it, and figure out how to pay back the victims and creditors fairly. Prevents the family from squirreling money away.
So Moselle, the big estate,
Yeah.
that was part of the receivership.
Yes, and it had to be sold off. The entire 7,770-acre property was actually rebranded, they called it Cross Swamp Farm, and sold for $3.9 million.
They tried to erase the Murdaugh name from it.
Seems like it. And the main house itself, where the murders happened, plus about 21 acres around it, was sold separately just this year, 2024, for $1 million. Apparently to someone who specializes in restoring properties with difficult histories.
So the physical symbols of the dynasty are literally being dismantled and sold off.
Piece by piece.
We also got some glimpses into his estate right after the arrest, didn't we? The body cam footage.
We did. The footage from his arrest in September 2021, when he was leaving that rehab facility after the roadside shooting fiasco, it showed him clearly suffering from severe opioid withdrawal.
Mentioned physical symptoms.
Yeah, the reports mention significant diarrhea issues. It just underscored his deep physical dependence on opioids once his ability to easily obtain them was cut off. The powerlessness was immediate.
And even in jail, awaiting trial, the drama didn't stop. There was a fight.
Right. While he was being held at the Alvin Glenn Detention Center in Columbia, he apparently got into a physical fight with another inmate.
Who was the other inmate?
A man named Robert Drayton, who had actually been convicted years earlier of raping Alex Murdaugh's niece.
Wow. So they ended up in the same jail.
Seems so. Reports said Drayton was antagonizing Murdaugh, and they got real banged up in the fight. Just another layer of the violence and dysfunction surrounding the family, even behind bars. The sheer scale and, frankly, the horror of this whole saga just captivated the nation, didn't it? The media coverage was intense.
Unbelievable. Documentaries, docuseries everywhere. HBO Max, Netflix, Hulu. Everyone seemed to have a Murdaugh project.
And you have to mention the podcasts, too. Especially the Murdaugh Murders podcast hosted by Mandy Matney.
Right, that was really influential early on, wasn't it? Helping to uncover and publicize a lot of these connections and alleged crimes before they hit the mainstream.
Absolutely. It played a significant role in pushing for answers and scrutiny when maybe the traditional systems weren't moving fast enough.
It really shifted the narrative from just a local tragedy in the Low Country
To this major national, even international, case study in corruption, entitlement, and the abuse of power.
It's a pretty powerful example of how independent journalism and media can sometimes force accountability where established institutions have failed.
Definitely. It shows that even in places with deeply entrenched power structures, it's getting harder to keep secrets hidden forever in today's media landscape once someone finds a crack to let the light in. #tag outro.
Okay, so we've gone deep into this century of Murdaugh dominance, and it's just stunningly brutal collapse.
Yeah.
When you step back, what's the main thing that stands out, the big takeaway?
For me, it's the realization of how deeply intertwined and fundamentally corrupt the whole system was for so long. You had the public power of the solicitor's office essentially enabling and protecting the private wealth generation of the family law firm, PMPED.
The two fed each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it took the pressure from just one civil lawsuit, the Mallory Beach wrongful death case, to finally pry open the lid on Alex's finances.
And once that happened,
It wasn't just a few bad decisions that came spilling out. It was decades. Decades of systematic theft, manipulation of the justice system, and preying on the absolute most vulnerable people in their community.
for nearly 100 years, their whole success seemed built on this idea that they controlled the system. They were the system in that part of South Carolina.
They wrote the rules, they prosecuted the crimes, they influenced the judges, they leveraged outcomes for their own gain. They truly seemed to believe they were untouchable.
So maybe the final thought for people listening, the really provocative idea here is about how fragile that kind of power can be once real accountability finds even a tiny crack to get in.
Right. We saw this entire dynasty built over generations crumble almost overnight because the external scrutiny from one determined family seeking justice in a civil case
The Beaches.
was finally able to break through that local shield they'd built around themselves. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Wonder what?
How many other places, how many other entrenched political or powerful families across the country might be operating in similar vacuums of accountability, and what's it going to take? What's that specific pressure point needed for the truth to finally catch up with them too?
That is a deeply unsettling question about power, justice, and who gets held accountable. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the rise and the truly catastrophic fall of the Murdaugh dynasty.